Good morning, it is Tuesday the 16th of December. I'm Maeve McMahon and this is Europe Today, Euronews's daily live fix of European news and analysis. Coming up today, a real chance for peace. European leaders at key talks in Berlin have declared they made significant progress on ending the war in Ukraine, but insisted that nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. In a huddle between American envoys and EU leaders, including the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, Europeans said they stand ready to lead a peacekeeping force in Ukraine. To get up to speed, let's turn straight to our Ukraine correspondent, Sasha Vakalina, who joins me here in the studio. Good morning, Sasha Vakalina. Good to have you with us. How significant is this announcement? What is your reading of the Berlin talks?
It is the first time when we hear from the European leaders on paper the real commitments from the European countries, not only to Ukraine, but also to the United States, following Donald Trump's calls for the Europeans to take more of a responsibility when it comes to ending Russia's war against Ukraine. The host of the meeting, German Chancellor, said that this is the first time since the war began a ceasefire now seems possible. We want to move along the path to peace together with the Ukrainians, our European partners, and the United States. This is a real change of tone there, Maeve, and this is indeed probably the first time when we hear this commitment and this optimism as well from the European leaders about what's coming next. Now, let's take a closer look at some of those commitments. This is the multinational force inside Ukraine. Important to clarify here, this is about the willing countries from Europe, but also the force inside Ukraine far from the front lines. Mechanism to monitor and verify ceasefire, legally binding assistance for future attacks, something that Kyiv insisted upon to make sure that Russia cannot attack again, and EU accession. Of course, what Kyiv has been trying to do for a long while now and trying to overcome some of those vetoes that are blocking its European aspirations at this stage.
Indeed, but what will Ukraine need to do to concede in return?
There are quite a few points that are still remaining there, and Volodymyr Zelensky spoke about some of them, saying that Ukraine managed to amend the plan in some sense and the rest will stay for further negotiations. Let's take a listen.
Є деякі речі, які, на мій погляд,
Some things are, in my view, destructive and will certainly not help us. It is important that I don't see them today in the new edits of the documents.
документів. І для мене це важливо, тому що гідність – це важливо.
To me, this is important, because dignity is important. The topic of concessions is not relevant anymore.
Не актуальне.
He also said that he has the feeling that the US side and the US delegation heard Ukraine and heard Ukraine's position, of course, and the sticking point of the territorial concessions. This is very important. Zelensky said that Ukraine will not accept any sort of Russian control over Donbas, but it is believed that this point will remain for the very end of any negotiations, and this is something that will be discussed directly between Russia and Ukraine, Maeve.
OK, we'll stay tuned for the, of course, reactions from the Kremlin. But Sasha Vakalina, thank you so much for that update. And now to dive more into the politics and diplomacy behind the Berlin gathering, we can actually cross over now to the German capital, where our correspondent Laura Fleischmann is standing by for us. Good morning, Laura. Great to have you with us. Just tell us, how did the German Chancellor Merz actually manage to get the Americans to Berlin?
Friedrich Merz actually has a great connection with the US administration. He is seen as a transatlantic politician. And one of the first things he did when he came into office as Chancellor of Germany was actually to visit Donald Trump in Washington, D.C. They had a great talk in the White House in front of the press and formed a great connection. Trump afterwards even called Merz's friend. So they do keep close contact. And it was no surprise that the Americans actually came when Merz asked them to.
And is Friedrich Merz now seen as one of the strongest politicians in the EU, perhaps, for this?
If he is not seen as one of the strongest politicians yet, he could be seen as one of the strongest with the summit if there is perhaps a Christmas armistice coming out of it as a result. But the fact that the summit was held in Berlin already shows how influential Friedrich Merz actually is. It was discussed to have the summit in Paris, as a German newspaper reports, but the location was changed to Berlin, perhaps because of Merz's great connection with the US administration. And Merz is seen as an Außenkanzler in Germany, which translates to foreign chancellor because of his great focus on foreign diplomacy and international politics.
OK, Laura Fleischmann, our Berlin correspondent, thank you so much for that update. But now, coming up, we'll be speaking to Thomas Waitz, the Austrian ecological farmer and member of the European Parliament for the European Green Party. Thomas Fates is in Strasbourg this week, where members of the European Parliament are meeting. On their agenda, a potential showdown on the EU's trade deal with the South American bloc Mercosur. Ursula von der Leyen was planning to head to Brazil this weekend to sign off on that trade deal that is 3 decades in the making. European industry see it as a Christmas gift they've all been dreaming of, but farmers are not convinced. For more on this, we can cross straight over to the European Parliament in Strasbourg and bring in Euronews' EU editor, Maria Tadeo. Good morning, Maria. What is the latest on this?
Well, good morning, Maeve. And so close yet so far. It's a massive trade deal that could be signed with Latin American countries, including, of course, Brazil and Argentina. The head of the European Commission, as you said, was supposed to get on a flight on December 20th, but that is now, excuse the pun, up in the air because the French are calling for a delay to this vote. Germany and Spain are pushing to get it done. They see big business opportunity, but it now hangs really in the hands and in the balance of the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. She could decide whether there's a qualified majority to get it through the finish line or a blocking minority enough to grind this to a halt. Now, to debrief, we are joined indeed by Thomas Fates, who is a member of the European Parliament for the Greens. Of course, you oppose this deal. Why? Because some would argue at this point it justifies a logic.
Well, it might be a good deal for industry, but we're sacrificing small and medium-scale farmers. We're putting them into an unfair competition while cutting the funds for farming in the European Union at the same time. We have a situation where, pesticides are used in South America that are banned in the European Union. They have no control over the origin of beef. They have no control over the use of antibiotics as growth promoters. So that's double standards.
Okay, you say it's double standards. But when the Commission say we have done everything to include the safeguards, and by the way, you're going to vote here, when they say you will get compensated if there is unfair competition, are they lying or what?
No, well, the safeguards, this is kind of a tranquilizer, a sedative, especially for the French farmers. Basically, this is already in the trade agreement, and it's just the implementation legislation. There's nothing new about that. These safeguard mechanisms will only start working after the damage has been done to the market. And as a farmer, you only go bankrupt once, because if you're bankrupt, then your land is owned by the bank and it's over.
Okay, but let's talk about the farmers, because some would argue the opposition to Mercosur has nothing to do with the terms now. It really is about, and I say this with all due respect, the farming lobby and the subsidies around it. And ultimately, it comes down to money. How do you respond to that?
No, well, it's the big farming industry that will profit, and it's the massive amount of small and medium farmers that will pay the price. So if this is the farming lobby that you're talking about here, I'm also part of the lobby that lobbies for small-scale farmers. Because if we lose them, we lose the rural areas, we lose infrastructure in rural areas, we also lose the ability to supply our population independently with food. And this is, I think, a high value that we should protect.
What about those who say there's geopolitical value? This is a new alliance with Latin American countries where you're doing is short-sighted, and it's also dangerous at this moment in time.
Well, there is absolutely geopolitical value in this, but then support the European farmers. You cannot cut the funds for the farmers by 20%, literally, and by 40% if you include inflation. Then support the farmers right, and don't sacrifice them just for the profit of a few multinational companies or European industry.
Okay, so how is this going to end then? Because the clock is really ticking. Some say if this flops on December 20th, that's it. Mercosur is dead and left for good now. So how will this end, and what can we put on the table in 4 days to get it through the finish line?
Well, Commission can still promise that they adjust the so-called multi-annual financial framework, so the budget for the next 7 years, and support farmers in, being able to survive this unfair.
They cannot do this in 4 days, and you know this very well. The deadline is December 20th. They cannot change the budget in 4 days.
The Commission can, if there's a political will. They come out with the communication and give promises at least. It's not a final decision, but they can see that they take the worries of farmers serious. And they also do this to make this deal happen.
Of course, a lot of this now depends too on the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. The French are now calling for a delay to this vote. She could decide which way it goes. So which way is it going to go?
I think she's going to carve in, as she did in many occasions. Unfortunately, that's what I expect from Georgia.
Because she's weak? She's weak?
No, because she has a tradition in promising and not fulfilling her promises.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining us, sir. And of course, Maeve, that was Thomas Fates, who is a member of the European Parliament. And of course, the Green Party. A vote is expected too on the safeguards, but the big vote, Maeve, will be the member states. And we just talked about, it really comes down to Rome and Giorgia Meloni, she has the power either to delay it and possibly kill it or make it fly.
It does indeed. Maria Tadeo, thank you so much for that live update from quite a quiet Strasbourg this morning. And thanks, of course, to the Austrian MEP, Thomas Fates, as well. And while MEPs are voting today in Strasbourg, over 5,000 farmers from all across Europe and 1,000 tractors are en route to Brussels for a major protest this Thursday, the same day, of course, as the EU summit. Our Jakob Janis has been taking a look at the farmers' winter of discontent.
It sounds like a bad joke, lumpy skin disease. But in France, nobody is laughing. Farmers are clashing with police as their herds get slaughtered to stop a viral outbreak. And strangely enough, this virus might be what kills one of the biggest trade deals in EU history. Here is the connection. French farming unions are fighting the systematic culling of entire herds when just a single case is detected. Meanwhile, Brussels is pushing the Mercosur deal, a trade pact that would open the door to South American beef. Farmers call it a double standard. Why should we sacrifice our herds to meet high standards, they ask, when we are going to import cheap meat from Brazil, produced with pesticides and antibiotics banned in Europe? And that anger lands in the European Parliament tomorrow. Our European lawmakers will vote on a reciprocity clause. It's basically a mirror rule. If you want to sell to Europe, you must meet European standards. If MEPs vote against it, they risk a revolt in rural Europe. And if they vote for it, South America might walk away as it doesn't want to import European laws. In the EU, our politics is often local. And right now, locals are angry.
Jakob Janis there. But now moving on, are you a big online shopper? Then stay tuned for a levy coming your way from next summer. In an attempt to tackle the flood of cheap Chinese e-commerce packages, Brussels has agreed on a very concrete measure that will hit your pocket. Ida Sanchez reports.
€3 earrings, add to the shopping cart. A €5 organizer for all your odd socks, add to the shopping cart. This toy for your 5-year-old child, which is way cheaper on a Chinese website, add to the shopping cart. Buying cheap objects from sites such as Shein or Temu is a daily routine for many Europeans. But the situation will change in July 2026. EU countries have agreed to impose a €3 temporary flat custom fee for small parcels entering the EU. Until now, these objects have been exempt from duties. But why? Are the countries against the citizens saving some money? Far from it. Those packages pose a competitive disadvantage for European companies exposed to more taxes. Many of them pose health and safety risk for consumers. They might use toxic chemicals or don't follow the regulations that make them safe for children. Risks that citizens might not even be aware. Many of the websites even sell products that are illegal in the EU, like counterfeit products. The number of small parcels entering the EU has raised sharply in past years, and it looks it's not going down anytime soon.
Ida Sanchez reporting for us there. But that does bring this Tuesday's edition of Europe Today to an end. Thank you so much for tuning in. Join us again tomorrow. We'll have all the latest on the Western Balkans summit that's taking place right here in the EU capital. So look forward to seeing you then. Take care and see you soon.